Do you ever become like aware of your tongue? And you're just like, what is my tongue doing? Sometimes it seems like it just has a complete mind of its own, and it's like pushing against the roof of your mouth, like really aggressively, and you're like, whoa, why are you doing that, tongue? Does that ever happen to you?
Not my tongue, but I have other parts that I get aware of, like
Yeah.
when I feel tension somewhere, and like sometimes my shoulders, they go up, and it's like tension building, and then I notice it, and I'm like, what am I doing? And then, okay, relax, it's good.
Yeah,
So,
it's like each part of our body is like just as like conscious or sentient like as our mind is. Like does our hand like have its own consciousness?
who knows? Yeah.
I guess in a way, because there's like trillions of microbiome like within each of our body parts that are like kind of doing their own thing. To me, it's like fascinating that like our cells just kind of know what to do.
Yeah, there's definitely some type of intelligence present.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
we're such a complex organism, like full of so many various aspects and like genetic creations that we're not even like conscious of are there, but they have a direct impact on our lives.
yeah, it's like the whole micro and macro body. Same thing with the universe. It's just maybe we're just like cells of a bigger picture. Like planets are just cells of the whole universe, and you zoom
Yeah.
out, you see a grander picture. You zoom inwards, and then it just keeps
Yeah.
on going
Like humans are the
at
individual
every level.
cells of the entity that is planet Earth.
Yeah,
Oh, it's so fascinating.
at every level, there's possibly some kind of intelligence that's present, like some kind of awareness or something.
Yeah, and not to mention like etherical entities that could be around us at any times that we sometimes we have to enter into a particular headspace in order to see them and interact with them. I see a lot of those in your artwork. Have you ever had a mystical experience that like directly influenced a painting?
Yes, definitely. I think where the name Cosmic Jester originally came from was during one of my first deep ayahuasca journeys. That's the one that just really kickstarted all of it. It was probably one of my most profound experiences. Um, yeah, it kind of, I was in ceremony. I had no idea what to expect. Of course, I was already really big into Terence McKenna and reading up about psychedelics for a long time. I got very interested in it. And then, the day arrived. It was time for me to go in ceremony and to actually experience it. And on a certain moment, I was just laying in ceremony, and then suddenly, like the whole sky opens up, and we were inside, but it looked like the whole sky opens up, and space comes peering through, and it looks like, if you've seen Doctor Strange, the whole door. Where he goes into the astral realm, and then you see the big face. It kind of looked like that, like very
Wow.
cosmic jester vibes. And it looked at me. I was staring at it, and there was this profoundly absurd intelligence present. And I looked at it, and I was like, it feels so familiar, and it told me like your smile is gonna change the world. And I was like, what does that mean? Yeah, and
Wow.
I suddenly got like humor, and just having a laugh is super important. Like the way you look at life, and that's when the whole cosmic game, the cosmic joke, suddenly like it connected. I was like, yes, of course. And then the whole jester archetype, it manifested, it showed up. And in that moment, it intertwined. Like I noticed that was a big part of me, that cosmic face, that intelligence, that was me staring back at myself. And then, it really influenced one of my first pieces. That was, the Cosmic Jester. And just take life less seriously and have more of a sense of humor about things. That experience really was pretty profound.
Yeah, like the cosmic prankster who is planting little seeds of laughter across the information networks of humankind. That's so interesting. So this because I've heard a lot of people talk about jesters and kind of like a cosmic carnival sort of sense when they smoke DMT or have ayahuasca experiences, and like it seems as if it's this like interdimensional prankster realm, and that theme really becomes like it's very apparent in your artwork, and there's that particular flavor that's like present across all of your paintings, which I think is just so fascinating. So did your art style kind of come like from that journey in on ayahuasca?
More or less. I think it's been a lot. It's been heavily influenced by doing these psychedelics and then just really connecting with these archetypes, and just sometimes there's this ominous feeling to it as well. It can be a bit scary, which is typical ayahuasca. It's a lot of shadow work, but there's a lot of humor to it. Like if you look at a circus or a clown, it can be very scary and freaky, but at the same time, it's trying to give you a sense of humor and make you laugh and just question things, and doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's really present in some certain states while doing psychedelics.
Yeah.
So I always found that very fascinating, and it's something I can really learn a lot from as well. Just like the trickster archetype, which is, for example, the fool. There's a lot of wisdom in it because he's playing around and he's showing, not telling, and not taking things too seriously. And when people take things too seriously, he tries to, how do I say it? Like, make them question what they're doing, like make them question their reality or their perspective. And that's something that's really inspiring for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that aspect of like finding humor in things is really important as well, because it's kind of like the opposite emotion of like sorrow and grief. Like we're able to feel this intense like sadness over loss, but we're also able to feel this like intense joy that like shakes our entire body and makes us like make weird noises that come out of us that are these expressions of sheer joy. And I think it's important that like humans embrace like both sides and both spectrums of that, because that sense of humor is really really important. I think humor is really important to me, and I love seeing it like come out in artwork as well and in animation. You know, because we can kind of stretch the boundaries of goofiness to like a pretty far extent. So you had this vision during an ayahuasca ceremony. I'm just curious if you have any like tips or tricks, I guess, to like set up a psychedelic experience for ourselves.
Well, like I always think setting is super important. Just like Terence McKenna always says set and setting. It's one of the main things, and intention, putting up the right intention in order to go into these spaces. Like, what do you really want to get out of? Why are you doing this? If it's just for you want to watch a movie and you want to take some shrooms, that's one way to do it. But I think there's a lot more to it if you really take it seriously and then do it in a ritual setting. You can get a lot more benefits out of it. So I would suggest just try and center yourself, find a quiet space, maybe preferably in nature, find songs or music that can really inspire you and touch you.
Dude, I've been listening to East Forest a lot lately, and on SoundCloud he has a 5-hour mix that's called Music for Mushrooms. And I'll link you to it afterwards, but you can also, for the viewers, you can look it up on SoundCloud, East Forest, and it's called Music for Mushrooms, and it's like, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the most calming, chill, ambient journey through these like sonic dimensions of I don't even know how to explain it, but it's so good. I've been going back to it time and time again. And for those who do not know, we are speaking today with Tim Verhoeven. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's
awesome. Right. Also known as CosmicJester33 on Instagram. And I've been an admirer of your art for some time now because you have this really consistent dark carnival, like psychedelic Jesterland kind of vibe going on it. Tim is an artist and animator working in Photoshop and After Effects primarily, just as I do, which is really, I'm always super excited to talk to another digital creator, especially someone who's using visionary and mystical experiences or tapping into that mystical imagination in order to create things. Tim, how would you describe your art to somebody who's never seen it before?
Visionary art, mysterious, psychedelic, a bit goofy. I also try to work a lot with symbols sometimes. I think there's a lot of wisdom in symbols. You can use them in specific ways to instill a certain message, or sometimes even when a vision shows itself to me, it's after some time I start to understand it better and get more insights about it. It's not always that I know what it's about, but after some time, it kind of reveals itself to me as well. So I learn from it every time. I can learn from it after watching it a year later. I put in little things that I wasn't even aware of, and then suddenly that makes sense. So symbolism is something that I'm very fond of as well. Other than that, it's just like whimsical, a cosmic carnival, cosmic parade, very jester-like.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and as the viewers can see it, as that artwork has been floating behind us throughout the podcast and all of its glorious crisp detail, you definitely do incorporate a lot of symbolism into your artwork, like usually like really small things that are in the detail. I'm curious because I've personally had this experience, but have you ever had like a really specific symbol or like icon appear to you during a mystical or visionary experience?
Triangles, mostly, like the pyramid shapes, eyes. Not necessarily symbols, like maybe in a mythological way. I mean, oftentimes there are specific themes when I journey. Like sometimes it's very Christian related. I'm not Christian, but there's themes that come up that suddenly make sense to me. Or in Norse mythology, sometimes it's very Asian, like Chinese dragons appear, and then stuff like that. And so it's always a big surprise for me. I think that there's a lot to it that these ancient cultures were probably tapping into as well. So it's all there.
Yeah.
So that's something that's always prevalent. Some kind of overlapping theme, whether it's Norse mythology, Egyptian. It's a mixture.
Yeah. It feels like, because I've had one particular experience on mushrooms where I went into this like fractal petroglyph world. I was like inside of a car engine that was like composed of these like Egyptian statues and structures that were, and I was like going further and further into these like various levels, and there were these pistons that had these like Egyptian statues on them, and it was a really interesting experience. It was actually horrifying at the time. I wanted it to like stop, which kind of really highlights the importance of creating like a safe set and setting if we are going to take this journey, and also like really not going too far. Like on my own vision quests recently, I've been very intentional about like where I'm going and what I'll be doing during that experience. And it's like never, and I don't even take like full doses, I guess you could say. I take like very, very small amounts, and that's usually more than enough for me to like tap into some kind of etherical world. Is I think that the fact is that these realms are always like right here. We're living right next to them. And I think they're accessible at any point in time. And I kind of think that that's what that mediums are tapping into. And I think that there's a mystical imagination that we can access in a sense that has like all this wild information to it. And it seems like the Cosmic Jesters world has made itself really, really apparent to you. Have you always like had like a carnival theme to your artwork, or was there like a specific point where you kind of like took your art in this direction of having this cosmic realm to your work?
Yes, I think so. In the beginning, it was definitely very carnival-like, especially with DMT. You really get those feelings. But what you said about not doing very big doses, which I also think is, it's important as well, because for me, it's a lot about feeling using these medicines. Like you don't necessarily need always to go into really big doses. It's always there. Inspiration is always there to be found. And you can tap into that. And psychedelics are just one way to open up that space and feel. And connect more with it. And for me, sometimes it's more about like feeling and getting to work with these plants and then just seeing what insights come up. And sometimes I don't even have to take any psychedelics at all. It's just imagery that kind of comes from the imagination, which is the same place. And then it kind of takes a life on its own. I also get inspired a lot just by life in general. I think when you look at sometimes I just go browsing on Pinterest, because there's a lot of stuff that reflects the psychedelic space. For example, a circus or Las Vegas type of imagery, certain patterns and shamanic art. And when you look at it, it really reflects, it's a reflection of those worlds, whether they are aware of it or not. But it's there. So, and also is a big inspiration as well, just life itself, and then looking at these images, and then it kind of takes off. Yeah, inspiration takes over, and then it becomes its own thing.
Yeah. Life is so layered and complex. Like I was thinking about the fact that I'm in the Southeast United States and you're in Belgium, and we are connected through a portal that is going underneath the ocean in microseconds and communicating like exactly where we are, what we're doing, what our surroundings look like, and the audio through this portal instantaneously across the ocean. Which the fact that we have this technology in and of itself is fascinating. And as we're recording this message is going to be broadcast out and accessible to anybody who has access to YouTube, which that complexity is super psychedelic in and of itself. I think I feel like there are machine spirits that have kind of been spawned through the information age, and that there are these entities that exist like on the machinery and the computers that we're using to do our day-to-day tasks, which to me is really inspiring. And I know that you as a digital artist, like you're using these electronic tools on a regular basis to create really, really fascinating artworks. So I want to talk about VR a little bit, because I've seen you doing some really interesting things within that space. Where do you think VR is headed? And also, I know you've been using VR, so I'm curious if you can talk about your experience within the virtual universe, and then also tell us like where you think it's going.
I haven't been using it very long, so I think I've only been playing around with it for a month. I got a headset 1 month ago. I was really curious because I saw a lot of interesting stuff happening by other artists, and it really piqued my interest. So I got a headset and just dove in, and I was very surprised. Once you're in that space, you're like, oh, damn, this has a lot of potential. And it really piqued my interest. So I started playing around with Tilt Brush from Google, and you can just make basic shapes, and it's very intuitive. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun so far. So just trying to see what I can come up with. And the nice thing about VR is once you put on a headset, you're in it. You're like, everything just fades away, and it's a lot more easier to get into a certain flow state because there is no distraction going on. So you're just really you're strapped in, really in the matrix. And I see a lot of potential. I think a lot of things are happening right now, especially with the whole crypto scenes and NFTs that are becoming very popular. A lot of artists are starting to explore more and more digital art, more VR art, interesting collaborations happening. So yeah, I'm really curious to see where it's all going to head. And I think we're going to have some sort of a digital renaissance where we create very fascinating, interesting places that we can visit and lose ourselves in. Kind of like a psychedelic journey in of itself, where we are creators of our own worlds, and we can go visit other places and other people's worlds and see what they can come up with. And that to me is very fascinating. Just like what can you create? Like if you have when all bets are off, like you have everything you can imagine, what will you create? Because in real life you still have there's a certain practicality to it. Like if you want to create a stone temple, you really still need to use tools, and it's a lot more taxing. And in VR, everything is, it's more ethereal in a sort of way, and everything can happen a lot faster. So I'm really curious to see where it's heading and what people are going to create.
Yeah, like the objects are just data. So if you want to move a boulder in VR, you can essentially just like select it and then move it, versus in the real world, you have to like pick up a boulder, which is like a couple tons and essentially impossible. Yeah, I think that especially with crypto art, I think that's going to really evolve in the virtual reality and also in the augmented reality. I think we're going to see more and more AR kind of stuff appearing first, because I've used Tilt Brush, but I was only able to use it for about like 20 minutes, and like it was a fascinating 20 minutes, don't get me wrong, but it kind of like it felt like it was like zapping my brain, and my stomach kind of like felt to turn. I really believe that the technology is going to become more friendly for like long-term use. And like you said, like there's going to be a cyberdelic paradise like within these virtual realms, kind of like there is in like a two-dimensional fashion on the internet right now. And I think that's really incredible.
Cyberdelic, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually I started a Facebook group a while ago called Cyberdelic Art and Music, but I'm actually going to change it to the Visionary Art Podcast group, because that's way more what I'm like actually doing. But yeah, I think that these realms are absolutely fascinating. Like I think eventually there's going to be algorithms that can work on like your own biofeedback that will allow you to create things, or will create things for you within these cyberspaces that are like completely intuitive to something really specific that we're thinking about. And then it can give us like that visceral auditory and visual experience like before our eyes. So if you wanted to have like a mushroom trip like in virtual reality, then you could like hook up these sensors like to your head, and then it would kind of take you like through this cyberdelic space that's like using your own biofeedback to create things right before your very eyes. Like, do you think that that's like a possibility within the future?
Yeah, I definitely think that, there's definitely room for that. If you look at what Elon Musk is doing with the Neuralink and where that's gonna head, we're gonna do all sorts of biohacking, and our bodies are just one big chemical factory, and we're probably gonna take advantage of it, as we do with all things. So it's inevitable, most likely, and which it's like a reflection of reality in itself, because we have the same potential here to manifest certain things, like creativity and our minds are a way of manifesting things into existence. That's at least what I believe. It just takes a really long time, and you don't always get what you want. It changes, and in cyberspace, things will probably be a lot faster, and things will materialize right in front of you. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting to see where it's all going. It's also a bit scary, though, for me, because technology really is accelerating at a rapid rate, and I think we should not forget the human factor and nature, and like we really need to find a right balance between those two. Even for me as a digital artist, because I spend a lot of time behind my computer, I also notice like I need to find balance between sitting in that world and then drawing back in nature and recharging myself. Because if I don't do that, I'm just gonna plummet.
Yeah. Yeah, just get completely frazzled. And I feel that big because I'm sitting in this spot staring at screens for like over 12 hours a day. And I wonder all the time, like, is this like destroying me? Like, am I all right? Like, I feel all right. I feel great. But it does make me wonder about like the, I guess the user friendliness like of digital items. I think in the future we are going to see like more advancements in the longevity of using these technologies. But I appreciate that you brought up that it's also a little bit scary because like we don't really know where we don't really know what the health effects of it right now are, since like technology has only really been booming for the last like decade and a half or so. And I've been really fortunate to grow up with this technology and watch it kind of evolve at this extremely rapid pace, which is absolutely incredible to like be a human during this time in reality. There's also like a really addictive possibility to this technology, and like with virtual reality it's so stimulating, it's so all-encompassing of what we're like giving our senses a very visceral, clear experience like right in front of us that can actually give us physiological reactions to the technology and to what we're experiencing within this virtual universe. So I think that there's like an ethical consideration that creators have to put into their artworks or their projects that utilize these virtual spaces. And I think that what you said earlier about like if you're going to put yourself in a state where we're open to having a mystical or visionary experience, then we have to set the proper intention with it. And I found that with my artwork, when I'm sitting down to create digital art, I have to have an intention of what I'm going to do. Otherwise, like I might just get distracted, like looking up random articles on the internet and going down this rabbit hole of like information that's stimulating but not necessarily useful. So I'm wondering if you have any like rituals or practices that you do before you get into your flow state.
There's some kind of things that I like to do. Definitely meditation is one thing. I always notice a difference in the morning if I don't go for a run and then meditate. If I don't do those things, then my mind is a lot more scattered. My focus is easily. I'm a lot more distracted. So I think meditation and just a good amount of exercise is beneficial. I think watching your mindset while you're creating, because we always have self-limiting beliefs in place. We always have certain things we tell ourselves, especially when you're creating art. A lot of stuff can surface, because for me, art is also a big healing process. So oftentimes when you're creating, you can have these little voices that are telling you like, this isn't good enough. What are you making? And where is it going? And all this self-limiting bullshit. And then once you pick up on it, you can like, get out of here. I don't need this. Like, focus. And that's super important for me. So some stuff that I like to do is I use VAP sometimes. I don't know if you are familiar with VAP.
Yeah.
So that's something that helps me just to clear negative patterns. I like saging sometimes, It's not that I'm putting up all crystals and everything, but just clearing the room. It helps to get in a certain mind state. And then grounding myself. When I notice that I'm drifting off and I'm losing focus, that's also okay. I just take a step back. I do something that helps me ground, like just move around in the house a bit, go outside for a few seconds, just breathe, watch your breath, your mind, stuff like that. And that really helps for me to achieve focus, just in daily life, not just art related stuff. And affirmations is also something that's very interesting. Just doing small affirmations, telling yourself like, I'm an artist. I create things, and what I'm doing is okay. Like trust in it. What you're doing, you're a creator, and all that stuff. Like very positive affirmations instead of always the negative, self-limiting bullshit you tell yourself. Like once you get aware of it, you can switch those gears.
Yeah, and also set up the space such that we're doing some kind of just something simple to tell our body from a physiological perspective, like we're going to be drawing for the next 2 hours or whatever. And like before I start a podcast, like I have a couple of rituals. I light some incense. I'll sit in quiet for a few minutes and just have some like visualization of like what I want to sort of curate. And I do the exact same thing with digital art. And I like how you mentioned that it's not like, we don't have to take it like too seriously, because it does, we do want that like active imagination. And from my experience, the same voice that says like, you should start that over, it's not good enough, those self-limiting beliefs that come up, those it often feels like it's the same voice that like gives really good ideas. That's like, hey, you should put a tree right there. You see right there, put a tree. It's all, that's also, I feel like, the same voice that tells us when things like need to be redone. So I think there's like an intuition that kind of comes with the individual artwork, as if like that art, as if we're like creating like a spirit in and of the artwork itself, and we're bringing to life these entities or these beings that are only really present in our imagination. So I'm curious, like, is your art ever inspired by like specific entities, I'm talking like whether it is like the cosmic jester that seems like it is your grand puppet from the cosmic realms. I'm curious if you ever encountered like a specific entity, like through art or through visionary experiences.
Well, I found it really interesting what you were saying about your intuition and where ideas come from, because oftentimes it's not my art. It's just a process that is happening, and I am more or less a conduit to allow it to happen. I notice that intuition is very important to tap into certain visions and try and put them out there. Oftentimes my ego can get involved, and then it's like, oh, I should do this and I should do that. But then I'm no longer trusting in what the artwork itself wants to represent. I should trust the vision, and then it takes a life of its own. It's not even my idea, because where do ideas come from? And it's already there. It's already somewhere in the ether. You pick up on it and you just try and manifest it and drag it onto your canvas. So I really try to respect and trust that process, like try not to interfere with it. So sometimes I have felt that certain entities and intelligence work through me, which is fascinating, and which has it's also taught me a lot. There's a lot of things in certain occult practices, like angels and demons and entities. You can work with, you can channel them, and I've kind of gotten interested in that as well by just doing psychedelics in general, because then I have noticed that similar mythological figures can sometimes inspire me, whether it is a Greek god or a Baphometic entity, and the mythical creature Pan with a pan flute, stuff like that really comes through in my own ceremonial work. And that really takes a hold of it sometimes in my artwork as well. Then I can feel like there's some kind of intelligence working through it. And that's also the same thing that, as I said earlier, that when I sometimes start to draw these things, and then it's only after a while that I suddenly find a book and I start reading upon this specific character or archetype, and then it suddenly makes a lot more sense, and it kind of reveals itself to me. While I was already creating that, and I wasn't really consciously aware of it, but afterwards it makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of like they drag me along and they're teaching me in a certain way specific things that don't always make a lot of sense while it's happening, but when I look back, it's like, oh, I understand now. So it's always a very interesting journey. It's very subconscious work.
For sure. Have you ever had someone recognize like one of the entities or things within your artwork?
I think so. Yeah, I think people have seen especially the jester Baphometic imagery. It's not always present because most of the artwork is still whimsical in a sort of way, so it's not always there. But I think the jester is, a lot of people have told me like, oh, I have seen this. I am familiar with it. It's really bringing back a lot of memories from my DMT trip, stuff like that. So it's always nice to hear when people can really relate with it.
Yeah, and creating something that's like relatable, because I think when we get this like particular captivation around a certain subject matter that we're illustrating, and it seems like once we start drawing it, then that little essence becomes more and more and more profound to us, and it just reveals more about itself to us. Because I did a drawing called or a painting called The Angel of Nightmares, which is based on this like 13-foot tall entity that I've seen in dreams numerous times. And I've had a lot of people tell me that it looks really familiar. It ended up getting shared on like a bunch of other pages and seen by like probably around 100,000 people. And seeing the comments on that was just like one of the most motivating things, because during the time that I was creating it, like I was absolutely captivated by this being. It was only once I started to draw it that it like really started to make itself very apparent to me. So let's say that we have a friend who has never had an encounter with like any kind of mystical entity. Is there any wisdom that you would share with them if they like wish to kind of have an experience with these beings? Like what would you tell them to start with if they want to, if they believe that there's these entities beyond the veil or within the astral and dream realms, but they've never had a personal encounter with them? What wisdom would you share with them? That's kind of a complex question.
No, but it's good. It's a good question though. And I would say I can't share anything. It is your journey, and whatever you will experience is for you to experience. So whether you believe it is an entity or it is mind, for me it's both of these things, but that is my reality and my truth. So I always find it really difficult to say it is this or it is that, because that might be true for me, but it might not necessarily be your truth. And I'm very careful with words, because you can easily, like, people can take things as it is, like they believe in a certain thing, which you always need to question. So it's best for them to make up their own truth. So I would say, as a guidance, I would just say, like, go and explore and see what's there and see what you can get out of it. It has brought a lot of things for me, but it's each journey. Like, everybody has their own journey, everybody has their own path. So yeah, it's for them to explore.
Yeah, I think the best advice for something like that, just because this is what I needed to hear when I was a little bit more like closed off and skeptical, I guess, is like to just relax. And I like what you said, that like there's no right way to do this. Like, it's kind of impossible to give advice to somebody on like how to experience something ethereal, because we really just have to like enjoy life and like let it happen if it wants to happen, or like meditate and, you know, maybe pay attention to our dreams and see what's going on within that space and within our own internal space, because I think there's always some kind of entity or like personality that's guiding and influencing us, even in like subtle ways. Like, in pretty much all spiritual practices, there's the idea that we are a spirit that is driving around this human body, and it's the spirit within us that's like making these decisions through this physical mortal incarnation. So in a sense, we all kind of have this inner spirit that is lost through the filter of our senses. And yeah, it is kind of a confusing and really ambiguous thing to recommend to people to like try and find that.
It definitely is. I think a lot of people are very disconnected, and we have become very disconnected as a society. So when you talk about spirit, that has so many different meanings for so many different people. But spirit, in essence, is like what motivates you, what drives you, but also it is something higher. It is something ethereal, something metaphysical, something that is your soul, and it has all these different meanings which are so layered. And for some people, when they hear those words, they're already like, not going there. That's not for me. I mean, I don't want to hear more about it. So it's definitely a big challenge for like getting it mainstream and getting like not telling people, but like, you know, there is more out there, and it's interesting once you start exploring it. And I think to each his own, but there's a lot more room to discover and a lot more room to explore.
Yeah. There's also a kind of stigma in society against these like kind of experiences. Like, if you start talking about entities that you've interacted with and describing these like 13-foot tall bird creatures that have come to you in meditation and then given you really specific information on like what to do, then there's a lot of people who will look at you like,
yeah, they will think you're crazy.
Yeah. But I think that more and more people are like accessing this kind of information, because there's whole societies and sections of the internet that are dedicated to these kinds of experiences. And there's entire genres of art that are dedicated to exploring like the mystical entities that we as a collective society have interacted with. And I think it's really fascinating how many of those creatures are like consistent across different people's mystical experiences and also encounters. So I asked Kyle, my homie Kyle, when he was on, this question, but I want to ask you as well. Do you think that there's a difference between the imagination and the true mystical?
I think they're both the same. Like you're accessing, like it. I really think like the overarching mind is one and the same thing, whether it is if it is within your imagination, in a sort of like, in a sense, it is real. It's not tangible, but it is coming from somewhere. It is out there. And then whether or not that the entities you interact with are real or not, for me, it is just part of that experience and part of the imaginary planes, which in my mind are real, because it's just one big cosmic mind that is just creating constantly. And it's very hard to describe for me. But I think mind, like, there's this Hermetic philosophy which says all is mind, and that's something that I really believe in, that everything is just part of the mind. Even the physical material plane is just one manifestation of that universal mind. And these other archetypal planes are just also expressions of that mind where we can interact with. They're just a lot more layered. It also reminds me a lot of the Jewish mystical Kabbalah. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it is also like a lot of layers on top. It starts with the material and then it goes up to the metaphysical. And that's the way how I kind of look at life. Like it's all real. It's all real. But in this moment, for me, this is my reality. Like I'm currently here on Earth, interfacing with you. This is part of my reality, but I'm aware that there's a lot more, and a lot more that is influencing me behind the scenes. And you can definitely tap into that, and you can make a connection with it, and it can enrich your life, or subconsciously it can ruin your life if you're not aware of it. These things might have a negative impact on you, and that can be explained in psychological terms, or it can be explained from a more traditional shamanistic point of view, which would be talking about spirits and entities. Like it just if you're familiar with Anton Wilson, I think he talks a lot about reality tunnels, which is a very interesting concept. It's like the lens you look life through. So it's all part of reality, but each person has their own kind of reality tunnel, their own perception of how they perceive life. And who is to say that one is real and the other is not? For that person, it is very real. So maybe it's just all real.
Yeah, and I think the mind is influenced by like these little subtle things that like happen within our reality, and it could be like a personality that appears during a daydream or something that then snowballs. We start, we keep thinking about it and we keep thinking back on it, and then it eventually develops into this entity or this like whole personality that is shaped around it. And I think that the imagination like is in itself like kind of mystical, because it's like this, it's this whole universe that each one of us has within our own reality tunnel that is only accessible by us, and the only way that we can really share it with the world is going ahead and creating artwork and creating imagery or like sculpture or some representation of this creature or entity that comes to us. So it's really hard to say whether like it's all whether it's like a real mystical thing, because there's no empirical way to prove it. I think we just kind of know to us and to ourselves if something is like real or not, because it feels real. There's a knowing that comes with it.
No, that's exactly right. And I think once you kind of like you get that, you can work with it. It can be excuse me. It can be a very it can be a tool set you can use, because you can align yourself with a certain entity and invoke it and work with it. Whether it is real or not, it doesn't really matter. It is in your mindset, it becomes real, and you can kind of connect with it and channel it, and it can help you in your daily life, like in your artwork, in just about everything that you do. It's the way you look at life, and then you can just try and reconcile with that entity. I think it's like it becomes a part of you, and then you start mirroring the characteristics, and you can use that consciously to better your life, to achieve what you want in life, to manifest in life what you want. So it's a very interesting toolkit, and once you kind of get it, it becomes like working with magic, using these types of tools. You become aware of it, and you can consciously use it instead of not being aware, and then it might unconsciously guide you in a direction you don't want to be in.
Yeah, for sure. Like I know for me personally, the Angel of Nightmares that I drew, it's actually really reminiscent of the Hopi Kachina, and there's like one in particular. I think it's the Snow Kachina or something, but the appearance of it is like extraordinarily similar to it. And even in my own meditations, like I've had times where I've went to visit this entity, and like it's a 13-foot tall, like possum looking owl kind of creature.
Oh, wow.
And I've in meditations I've like visited this being, and it just like stares at me lovingly. It never speaks or says anything, but it's always just watching, like, and I feel that it rearranges like subtle energies within the reality tunnels to make interesting things happen. Because in my dreams, when I would see it, it would always be during like a very uncertain or tumultuous time in my life that it would appear in my dreams. And then the day after I saw it, there would be some relieving event that would happen. Like something I was worried about would suddenly not be causing problems for me anymore, which led me to believe that like, oh, this is pretty mystical right there. This thing's really is like rearranging the energies and making things work out for me. So I
need some. I need an owl like that as well.
Yeah. I've had a lot of people tell me that like that this being is very familiar to them as well, which is really exciting. It feels really good to feel like I've touched on something that's actually present for not just me, but for other people in the world as well. Have like interacted with something that's very similar to this entity. Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about art. How'd you get so good at drawing?
Oh, Well, I have to be humble. I honestly, when are you ever good enough? Because I still feel like it's a never-ending journey. There's definitely things I really want to improve on, but I have been drawing. I would not say all my life, but since I was a kid, I was always very interested in drawing, and I knew I wanted to do something with art.
Yeah.
So I did. I studied graphic design and illustration, and that kind of propelled me along that pathway. I studied game design as well, which got me into 3D and ZBrush. So there was a time in my life where I was studying more and more of anatomy and trying to become a 3D modeler and doing more, those monsters you see in movie films, like the high rendered ZBrush monsters. That was something I was very interested in, and I tried to pursue that career as well. But I kind of hit a few roadblocks along the way, and then I decided to get more into illustration as well. And I had it was already there. I had a very whimsical children's book illustration kind of style, which I was heavily influenced by children's books, like the little golden books. I don't know if you know them, but they're very cute. They have a really cool style, and I really liked it. And I kind of, I really like that art style. So I was focusing on that for a while. And meanwhile, I was also just doing graphic design and for various ad agencies and festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then there were periods in my life where I didn't really draw at all because I was more occupied with graphic design or other stuff. Sometimes I had huge creative blocks as well. So for me, this whole process of the Cosmic Jester really has been a big healing process as well.
Yeah.
So it started a few years ago, and that really propelled me in finding my own style, like asking the questions like, what would I like to create, instead of trying to please like if you're a graphic designer, you have to please your art director and you have to work within a certain style and all that stuff. Just big corporate marketing tactics, which wasn't just vibing with me anymore. So I really got back into drawing, and then it's been a really interesting journey so far. So I've been just getting more and more painting loosely in Photoshop, and then try and figure out my own workflow, and then just experimenting a lot. And it's really been evolving for the last few years now.
Yeah, your artwork does definitely have this video game feel to it. Like the color schemes that you use are very well designed, and like now that you mentioned that you have a background in graphic design and that was something that you studied, I can totally see how that translates through your artwork, because the color schemes that you use they look like they're really fine-tuned and like very juicy and aesthetically pleasing. And I was looking through your artwork before we went onto the show, and are you planning on making like a feature length animation or like a like some kind of extended film? Because I feel like your content, like I would watch an hour of CosmicJester33's artwork.
An hour? Do you know how much work that is?
Oh yes.
I would definitely love to make an hour-long feature-length film. No, there's actually first color for me is one of the hardest things ever, because I really noticed that in the beginning my color was lacking tremendously, and I always had the toughest time figuring out color schemes. And so I really try and push myself in just doing lots of quick color studies and quick seeing what works, and then just learning more and more about color theory. And that really has helped me the last few years to get more to get it more presently in my art style. So that always has been a huge struggle. But if you struggle at something, you just have to do it more often, so you become better at it.
Yeah.
And then now the same thing with animation. So I'm trying to do more and more animation, and I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. In my mind, I'm like, I'm just gonna start small, making small animations, and that's gonna help me to achieve bigger dreams and goals. But I have to learn them first. So, I started doing small animations. That would be the best approach. But I always complicate things, because in my head it has to go like, oh yeah, it needs to be bigger and grander, and I want to make it longer. And then, I really put myself in a tough position. And I'm like, yeah, okay. But you learn by doing. So each time I start a new animation, I learn lots of new skills. And the best way to learn is to just start by doing it. And if there's something you don't know, you Google it, you look a tutorial up, and then that's how you learn. And that's how I learned most of my animation skills, because I think a year ago I didn't know how to animate. I started from scratch, just got After Effects, and I figured out, okay, let's see where I can take this. And I started just doing small animations. And one of the reasons why I really want to get more and more into animation is because, if you really go into psychedelic visions, it's not that they're always very still. Everything in my mind is always very alive, and there's a lot of stuff moving and going around and shifting, and I really want to portray that in my artwork as well.
Yeah.
I kind of want paintings that are moving and shifting, and there's been a lot of big projects in my head that like doing a whole musical or a theater play, because psychedelics and theater, I don't know, they seem to go hand in hand for me.
I agree.
Yeah, there's something about it, and in order to do that, I need to obviously learn all these skills so I can get better at it and create bigger and grandioser things. So I see myself in the future going towards that direction as well. But, start small and just keep going.
Yeah, there's so much that we can do with After Effects as well, because, we might open it up to do something simple like just make this thing move around a little bit. But then we're like, oh, I can add a glow adjustment layer over here that activates like at this specific time, and that'll like activate this space a little more. It'll give it a little bit more oomph. Or then you realize that like, ooh, I can add a kaleido filter onto this part, and that's going to make this really psychedelic vision like that's kind of on the periphery. And it's a deep rabbit hole to go down. And like whenever I open After Effects to do something, and I love that you mentioned that like it's easy to get carried away with it, because there really is so much that we can do within that software. And I the potential with it to create longer format animated stories is really present, but it does take an absurd amount of work. So I'm kind of curious how your mystical experiences and your experience with kind of putting yourself into an intentional space to create, like how does that kind of translate into your animation and your artwork?
Wait, what was your? How do I put myself into an intentional position to create? Or
yeah, sorry, that was kind of a really complicated question.
okay.
Yeah, how do you try and like recreate specific experiences through animation, or do you just like put your artwork into the software and then see where it goes?
It really depends on the project or what I want to create. Most often, I kind of have an idea. I see it already playing in my mind, or it starts off with a sketch, and then suddenly I want to bring the sketch to life.
Yeah.
And then I think about, okay, what if, for example, there's a door and the door needs to move? I need to draw the door. I need to draw something that goes on top, and I need to have two separate layers for the door so they can move separately. So I already start planning in Photoshop and start creating the various elements that I want to animate. So then it already gives me kind of an idea of how it's going to move and react, and then I drag it all into After Effects. And I noticed that it really comes down to the details that just sometimes really makes it pop. And because right now I'm working on something which seemed very easy in my mind. It's just something like it's a hook that comes out and it grabs something and it pulls it away. Sounds easy, right? But once you create it, it looks very cheesy and very crappy. And I'm like, I can do better if I want, if I just put a little more time in it. I can animate it so you have a pull and it moves a bit and then it wiggles and then it stretches, and I can add a motion blur on it and stuff like that. So that's what I mean. I make things a lot more complicated than I originally intended, because you have an idea and you think, oh yeah, it's going to look like this, and then you start making it and it just gets out of control because you want to keep on adding stuff, and you want to make it more complex. And then at a certain point you really have to like, okay, I need to wrap it up. I need to start the next project because I can keep going. And
yeah.
After a while, you also get into a sort of fatigue. Like if a piece takes too long, you don't feel it anymore. And I've often had that as well. Like I started a big piece and I have this really awesome vision, and I start working on it, and it's really taking a long time. I get fatigued, and I often put it away for an amount of time, and I start working on other things. And after a while, I sometimes go back into folders and look at older projects, and I see it, and I get interested in it again. I'm like, oh yeah, I never finished this one. And I open it up again, and I have new inspiration and new drive, and then I go at it again.
Yeah. That brings up another interesting aspect of creating art, which is perfectionism. And this is something that I personally struggle with all the time. How do you have a process for making sure that you like actually finish something? Like you were using the book animation as an example, and there's like, it seems simple, but then when you go in, there's like all these different elements to it. Do you have a process for like finishing things within like a certain amount of time, such that we don't get lost in like the need to like make it look perfect? Like how do you hold yourself back from making like a million little adjustments to make it like perfect?
Well, it kind of depends, because sometimes I feel as if if I don't keep pushing a certain piece, then it's not staying authentic to the piece. If sometimes it feels that I need to take a breather from it and I need to process it. Like if it's a really big piece, then it could take a long time, and I'm aware of it, and I'm okay with it because I know, like, okay, I'm gonna get more insights, and the piece is gonna slowly reveal itself to me, and I need to trust in that process as well. So just having that intuitive guidance that the piece tries to show you, that is one part of it. And then the other part is if you just have something you really want to do for fun, and it is just like something super that shouldn't take up too much time, then I really don't want to get lost in too much detail and perfectionism. So I always try to set up a certain time frame. Like, I want to finish this piece within a few days, or I want to get it over with by next week, or I want to post something on Instagram as well. I want to create something to post for tomorrow, and then that also plays a part in it. But for bigger pieces, I really take the time. I think it's important because it needs to stay authentic to the piece itself.
Yeah. I think what you said about having like a specific timeline for something like this, I'm going to spend only 2 days working on this, and at the end of 2 days, then it'll be finished. I think that's incredibly helpful for having something that's finished and like has all the components necessary for it, but doesn't take like an insane amount of time, because I know that you also work in like really huge resolution artworks that are drawn in Photoshop, where you can zoom into like the tiniest little details and then like work things out from there. But at a certain point, it's like, who's actually gonna look there and notice that? Yeah. At the same time, I think having insanely detailed artworks that show like so much attention to these like little spots within the artwork, it kind of creates a really full experience for anybody that purchases the artwork, because the viewing time, the amount of time they can spend looking at this artwork is very long, and consistently be noticing new things. Like some of my artworks that have taken 6 to 9 months to complete. Those are the artworks that like people will still message me and be like, dude, like I just noticed the person hitting a bong in Cytopia. Like I can't, I've had this artwork for like 4 years. I can't believe I just noticed that. Yeah. And like when I get those remarks, I'm like, yes, it feels like all of that time that I spent working on like those little tiny details, the hours that I poured into just drawing a person hitting a bong, become worth it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because
I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think it's the perfectionism. Sometimes you just need to know when it's done, because you can always do better, but you just need to say to yourself like, okay, it's at a level that I'm comfortable with, it's done, it's over. And if you're not you're never always 100% happy with your work, because in the back of your mind, oh, I should have done this and this, and I could keep going. But at a certain point you need to say, okay, it's done, and then that the next one you can do better. And then obviously there's like the big pieces. When I work on a piece for print, then I know that it's gonna be huge. So you want some detail there. You want attention to detail, and I think it's important as well. Like if you have a big printed piece that it's crisp, it's clear, you can find little things that catch your attention, that tells a story in itself. That's also important. So it really depends on what your aim is.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think having intention and clarity as to what exactly it is that we're creating, if we have that in mind before we sit down to work on something, then that's a good way to guarantee that we're going to have this completed like in the amount of time that we're able to dedicate to it. So we're coming up on the end of our time for this podcast. Tim, I want to ask what's next for you? Like, what other projects are you working on right now?
Well, I'm working on a very personal piece at the moment. It's taken, I think I started this one in September last year. So
Wow.
it's been taking a very long time. I've been working on and off on it for quite some time now. There's weeks that I don't touch it, and there's periods that I feel like I need to work on it. So it's a really personal piece for me, but it's gonna be insane. I also do like I work a lot with mushrooms and have my own psychedelic ceremonies, and it's kind of a representation of that and the spirits that I work with, and it's a reflection of that. It's an homage to the mushroom. It's an homage to me sitting in ceremony. So it's a very personal piece, which I have a lot of, it's a lot of stuff in your mind is like, yeah, I'm making this, but I'm making it for myself. I'm not sure if I really want to put it out there, but it's become such a crazy piece that I feel like I should share it and put it out there. That's one project. Another one is a small animation I'm currently working on. It's part of the pyramids that I'm doing. I'm making these small little triangles. They're sometimes animated. I want to do a whole bunch of those. So that's something I'm working on. And then in the back of my mind, there's also something for a children's book that I one day want to create. And then there's like stories for more animations, smaller animations, but still have to get to those.
Yeah, one thing at a time, but it sounds like you have some really exciting things lined up that are coming out. And the personal artwork that you're working on, I'm assuming that it's like a really massive painting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Nice.
It's pretty big. Originally, I wanted to print it and then paint on it, and it was going to be 2.5 meters.
Wow.
In a square format, so it's very huge.
Yeah, that's enormous.
Yeah. And what I'm gonna do now is, because I painted it digitally, is I want to animate it. So I'm learning new animation skills in order to bring it fully to life. I'm not sure how it's gonna go yet, but yeah.
Are you gonna turn it into a massive NFT?
I was thinking about it.
Yeah. Because I think in the future, when we have like 8K monitors that can actually play these like 8,000 pixel wide animations and videos, I think having that insane level of detail in an animated painting, as processor power just gets better and better with every year, we're going to be capable of actually creating these like epic, enormous paintings that are all completely animated, and that is something that I'm really, really excited for in the future, especially in the NFT space. And I know that with your art being as like as complex and detailed as it is, I hope to own one of your NFTs one day so that I can have it playing within my virtual crypto gallery. And when we start seeing museums of NFTs that are popping up, then that's going to be a really good placement consideration for these digital artworks that are distributed across the blockchain. So it's really exciting to hear that you're working on something like that large and complex, because that scale is so inspiring to creators to get a window into our own personal little world that we've created. And before we end this, I want to ask about ceremonies. How would you describe the experience of these ceremonies to someone who's never sat in one before?
Well, it's a tough one. It's always different.
Yeah.
It's always different. But I would say it is like, it's life, pure life, just like everything, all emotions. You can feel sadness, joy, bliss, anger, everything. It's how to explain it? I mean, just, you can't. You need to experience it. It's the only way.
Yeah. Yes, ceremonies, any kind of ceremony can be kind of an indescribable experience when it comes down to it, because there's just so much that we can experience within that space. And it's these things that are often locked within us that will come up when we're in that state and having that intention of healing. It is those like darker or lighter aspects that really come to the surface, and it can be incredibly terrifying in the moment, but at the end of it, it can be one of the most fulfilling feelings to have gone through this experience and come out the other side with like some tangible new insights that are useful for us in our day-to-day life. And yeah, that is a very difficult thing to describe. And it does that's really amazing. Tim, tell us where we can find you.
You can find me on Instagram at CosmicJester33. I have my website, www.CosmicJester33.com. I think on my Instagram there's a link tree, and you can find my YouTube, you can find the Twitch page, you can find my foundation page, so it's all there.
That's amazing. And all of those links will, of course, be down there in the description. Tim, thank you so much for your time being on here today. And the viewers, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to tell me what you think of this video. This is episode 4, and I am still learning things with every episode, and I'm really excited to be on this endeavor. Tim, thank you so much once again. If you want to check out some super highly detailed Cosmic Carnival artworks and just see some of the most amazingly technically executed artwork and animation, Tim is a maestro of attention to detail. I am the same way, and it's so inspiring to see his work. So feel free to check out those links in the description and connect with Tim or connect with myself. And thank you so much, and have a wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.